I respect any individual and their choices and what they do in their life. That's something that I feel at an elementary school age, it's just too soon to have to deal with that.
That right there sounds to me like a very compassionate and reasonable father in the Fairfax school system, talking about a proposal that was debated last week before the board about granting a new non-discrimination rights to transgendered individuals. The focus of the conversation was about children and how hard it is for a child who is having issues with their gender identification. But one question was raised about what a parent is to do when a teacher starts to exercise those rights in the classroom, and that's why we wanted to bring on Fairfax County School Board member Elizabeth Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, board member, or I don't know what the title is there. I'm sorry. Member Schultz.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Fairfax County School Board member.
There you go.
Fine.
The question here is, and listen, I believe everybody has a right to dignity and a right to being treated with compassion. I get all of that. However, the rights of these of a transgendered person in the school district, what happens when they butt up against the rights of a parent wanting to raise their children in the way that they believe is the best way to raise their children? The question is, if a first grade child suddenly has a transgendered teacher, does the parent have the right to take that child out?
Well, certainly, and that's some of the concerns that I have with this policy coming forward as quickly as it has. And certainly, I appreciate the words that you have around having compassion, but the overarching point is that Fairfax County Public Schools does have a policy around non-discrimination based on sex. And the implications of implementing this policy are really what's seriously before the board. What are the gender issues around the usage of restrooms and locker rooms? Never mind the issues around physical education, health classes, athletic teams and clubs. What are we going to do when somebody decides that they have a gender issue and need to use restrooms and facilities of the opposite sex? Who decides? Is it based on how they're feeling on a given day?
Right.
Or what are those majorities, the feeling of the majority of the students in the employee population?
Yeah.
Those are very, very serious issues.
So is there something driving this? Are there cases right now where you're actually having to deal with this, or are you just looking forward to a time and a place when you know it's going to come up?
Well, I think it is a question of what is behind this, because certainly as a board member, that policy issue hasn't come before us. What we do know is that in March, Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring came out with a ruling to give rights to school boards to further expand the non-discrimination language. Mm-hmm. But those opinions were overrun by previous Virginia Attorney Generals, multiple times. So the question is, what is behind this policy, and are we putting the cart before the horse in terms of understanding what the rights are of the majority? We certainly want to, as a board member, and as a board collectively, protect, the vulnerable populations against bullying and harassment.
Right.
But not at the rights of the majority. And that's really the issue that's before us right now.
Our guest is Fairfax County School Board member Elizabeth Schultz. We're talking about this proposal to grant non-discrimination status to transgendered individuals. And you mentioned, can you just tell us, based on your understanding of what the policy is going to articulate here, what would the new policies be at the school level with regard to the use of restrooms and with regard to the use of locker rooms? I mean, this is sort of the thing that always gets the headlines, but I think as a parent of a high school-age daughter, I would like to know exactly who is allowed into a locker room at my high school.
Well, actually, I'm the parent of 4 boys, and so, I'm looking at this through a different lens, and I want to know, as a board member, what the plan is to protect the safety of young girls, teenage girls, and really female employees. And are those being taken into account, that if we create a new protected class with a vote like this, what happens with teachers and coaches and staff?
So you're asking those questions. Has anyone been able to answer those questions for you?
We do not have the answers to those. It's as if we're creating policy where the non-discrimination policy already exists based on sex, but we're expanding the language, and I'm not exactly sure why. And we're asking some very, very difficult questions around that. And I think that we have to have those questions answered before we pass a policy. It's a little bit like passing a policy to know what's in it. That hasn't worked out so well for us in the past.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, Elizabeth Schultz.
Yeah, you're of the opinion, I'm gathering, that it really the direction on protected classes and that kind of stuff should come from the state legislature?
Well, that is, we're a Dillon rule state, and I know that's a complicated issue, but we're not supposed to do things unless we are expressly given right in the Virginia General Assembly to do so. So the problem is that 2 other school systems in Virginia have already experienced these issues and had the Virginia School Board Association and their attorneys tell them you have to address this. But the question is, if Fairfax County goes on this, so goes the rest of the state. We're the 10th largest school system in the United States, and we're the largest school system in Virginia. And so if we rush to a judgment on this and put this policy into effect, you're not going to be able to get the genie back in the bottle.
Do you have some concern, though, about the fact that by taking up this issue, by establishing a policy, that you're getting into the realm of letting it be a crucible for or a social laboratory, I guess is the word I'm looking for, when really what I think most parents care about most is, hey, are we reading, writing, are we doing arithmetic, are we getting education done?
Well, I would think as a taxpayer and as a voter in Virginia and in Fairfax County that I would want my school board to be concentrating on a distraction-free, education-centered environment for both my students and my teachers. That's priority number 1. How is student achievement going? And the problem is when you get down in the weeds on what the school board is paying attention to right now, when UCLA's William Institute, which is definitely, a leader in this issue, says that nationwide it's 0.3% identify as transgender. Are we dealing with an issue that has us really off the rails on protecting and creating a protected class, where if we could just handle those on a case-by-case basis with some sensitivity and some thoughtful HR practices and student practices, that we could get back to education.
Well, this is an issue that we're going to continue to talk about. We raised it last week when the first discussion occurred at the board meeting, and it will be raised again, and a vote will take place on May 7th. We will continue to follow it. And Elizabeth Schultz, you sound like you're pretty reasonable and in a good place on this. I'm wondering how you ever found your way onto the Fairfax County School Board.
That's a call for a different day.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us.
Elizabeth, thank you so much.